All right, creating an annual preaching plan coming up here on the Better Sundays podcast at ReachKeep.com. Welcome to the Better Sundays podcast, focused, practical, and usable advice for church leaders looking to reach new young families and impact their community. Well, howdy, Mike Holmes here. Today we're talking about how you can create a sermon calendar or an annual preaching plan to help you kind of know exactly what you're going to be speaking on throughout the entire year. Now, when I say exactly, we all know there's lots of times when these things ebb and flow and up and down, and a lot of incidents happen and we need to change things. But it is better to have a plan than to not have a plan. And so we're going to be talking about how to do that. This particular podcast is a little bit different because what we've done is we've condensed one of our webinars that we did for the ReachKeep Academy. And we've kind of sliced and diced it a little bit to just get the important stuff in here, and we have made that just for you. So this is a little bit more concise of a preaching planning session. And so we have lots of good stuff entailed for you. We do have, if you stick all the way to the end, we have a couple of PDFs that we would love to send you to help you with your sermon series and with your annual preaching calendar planning, just some sample templates that we would send you. And so make sure you make it all the way to the end where we'll get to that. So we're going to jump into this webinar so you'll kind of feel a little bit different as it kind of choppy up a little bit here, but it'll be great. And this will help you to make sure that you are really on top of things with your planning. And by the way, planning ahead it makes it so much better. And I know that there's many times when sermons don't come together until the very last moment. This particular planning we're talking about here is primarily for your Sunday morning planning. If you're doing a Sunday evening or midweek stuff, you would just kind of multiply this and do it, 3 times over. Sometimes people have more, lengthy series during their Sunday nights or their morning or their midweek services. So this is sort of designed for a Sunday morning type of approach. Also, the more you plan, the better off your illustrations are going to be, the better off your application is going to be, and the better off your engagement is going to be. And we've talked about this often, that a sermon is there to help people to move forward and do something. Not necessarily just come to an altar and make a prayer decision, but actually do something. And so if you're planning ahead very well, you'll be able to plan some of the activities that your church would be doing. An example would be if you're going to do a teaching on evangelism, you would want to have, throughout your evangelism series, you would want to have some application of that, like, hey, we're all going to go out on a Saturday, or we're going to do this on a Thursday afternoon with the men or the ladies or whatever, and we're going to go hand out tracts, we're going to go do something. All of that kind of planning comes better. The application side of it comes much better when the sermon is set and you know where you're going weeks ahead of time so you can get some of that figured out. So anyway, let's just jump right into it, and I'll be catching you here a couple times throughout. We'll be talking more about this, but thanks for joining us here. And by the way, if this is important to you, good stuff, give us a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and we will catch up with you here at the end. Thanks a lot. Let's go ahead and jump into some things here. You're in the right place if you're bivocational, and we find that this type of teaching here that we're doing means a lot to the people that are they've got a whole nother job and a whole nother life besides church. And so sometimes the preaching calendar, the importance of having it organized needs to be perfect as well. You just got to really really focus on that, and it's hard when you're bivocational. If you're one of those easily distracted people, this is for you as well. You get kind of caught up on some other things, and the preaching, the physically preaching, you get it done, but the preparation time has been shortened, and it's not quite as cohesive across the year as where you want it to go. You're also the right place, if you're kind of one of those providentially led procrastinators. In other words, everything gets pushed off to tomorrow because there's so many things in the ministry that need to happen, and you've got to counsel, you got to do the funeral, you got to visit that person, you got to prep, you got to do the kids thing, you got to get the furnace working for Sunday morning. All of those things happen there, and a lot of that again seems to be providential. And I'm not really sure if providential and procrastinator theologically go together or not. You can settle that one, but you kind of probably know what I'm talking about there. The last one would be is if you just keep running out of time. There's not enough week, there's not enough day, there's not enough month, not enough year, all of those kind of things. This is kind of for you. So this is kind of where we're going. Real quick, I'm the pastor here, or I should say actually the right wording here is I'm the founding pastor of Sinclair Baptist Church. Just recently, stepped away from the leadership position. The main leader is now Josh Spencer. In fact, I think he's online with us here. But Pastor Spencer is now the main lead pastor, and I am doing a lot more ReachKeep and filling in the gaps and teaching Financial Peace University over the next 9 weeks and doing whatever I can to support my church. So, but this is our church building in the background. We're Sinclair. Like the gasoline plant, yes, for Sinclair is just, a couple hundred feet behind the church. So that's kind of where we are. It's a church plant. We're 13 years old, doing really well. Little town, 400 and some, and another town of 8,000 nearby that we draw from. And we draw really from the whole county. But that's kind of where we're at. You can, you probably know a little bit about us because we've been around. So anyway, but I'm Pastor Mike, they call me, or Mr. Mike, or founding Pastor Mike, or Pastor Emeritus. That didn't sound very good. I didn't like that. But anyway, that's my job. Let's just jump into kind of an overview. We're going to talk about the kind of the problems to solve, which I already mentioned them just a little bit. We're going to talk about why a calendar, why knowing where you're going is so important. We're going to cover this whole idea and how this is the nuts and bolts of it's going to be right here. The how to develop that preaching calendar and some of the things that you need to do to kind of get that. And then we're going to give you a bunch of resources. Let's talk about the problems here. One is the short preparation time. If you're speaking quite a few times during the week, you just can only, especially if you're bivocational, you can only stretch your study time so far. And we want to kind of stretch that, make that study time much longer. And if you know where you're going, this is going to really, help you out with the study time. If you know in, March that you're speaking on forgiveness or whatever, we can start to get those illustrations. You come across verses, you can add those, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The idea of indecision, nobody wants to be an indecision, and we talk to a lot of pastors here with the ReachKeep Academy. We do a considerable amount of coaching online, spend all sorts of time really talking to pastors all over the country and really North America. And I was on a call just the other day with those guys from Great Britain, and very interesting stuff. But people, the pastors, many of them are like, I don't know what I'm going to speak on this coming Sunday. And that is not an efficient way to live. It's not, it's hard. I mean, and obviously you want to get the Holy Spirit's leading and the guidance of, where you think you need to go with the maturity of your flock, but too much indecision is not a healthy thing. The third thing we're going to try to focus on, spend a lot of time, hopefully, talking about this, or actually you need to spend more time thinking about this, is this idea of integration. And it's like that the integration of what you are teaching on is not happening. So, for example, if you wanted to do say you're doing something about helping, being involved, volunteering, okay? Just plain old, you need volunteers, serve the Lord, be a servant, servant evangelism, servant spirit, servant this, servant that, and you're talking about that. Something that you'll want to do tied to that sermon is have an announcement that would say, oh, by the way, Tuesday we have a work day, or Wednesday we're going to go to the park and do a service, and next Friday we're going to go out and visitation, or I need you volunteers to do that. When we have our messages and we get very tight on things, and we don't really have it all put together. Just with the message comes at the last moment, the integration pretty much disappears because it is hard to make all of that stuff happen. Okay. For example, I'll give you another one. If you're wanting to like recruit more workers for your, children's program, you preach a message about we need to reach the children, let the little children come unto me. It would be appropriate then to have some type of, with your Sunday school team, like, hey, we need some more workers. We need a person in the nursery. We need someone in the 5th grade. We need a man to work with the middle school. And you'd need to have those things. Those are the answers to your sermon. So sermon isn't always come forward and just kneel and pray at the end and go home. A sermon is to sign up for something, to get involved in something, is to be involved and to really do something. And if you don't have it if you put it this way, if you're a last minute prep, you're distracted, you're running out of time, you won't have time to integrate those things. And so thus your sermons kind of end, and they have kind of a dead end to them. A person might get like, yes, I'm willing to be a volunteer, but if you don't have anything ready for them to do, it's not a good scenario. So the integration is an important thing. All right. Hey, this is Mike. And on the application portion of this, I want to jump in and just say this is so important, this idea of integrating it. And I know you're trying to reach young families with your church and your sermons. And so you want to make sure that you have this integration thing down pat. Integration of a message into a life takes more than a Saturday night, late night prep type of thing. That's why we need to plan way ahead. It's the idea of having that engagement and all the different things where they get to do something with the sermon. Remember, your sermon is not the finish. It is the beginning. It is not a dead end. It is the start of what is going on. Your sermon is about what you believe, but your application or your illustration, let me back that up. Your sermon is about what you believe, but your announcements are about what you're doing about what you believe. And the doing part is really where you go. So the sermon starts it, the announcements kind of take people into action. And if you want to really reach young families, you need integration with your sermon and with your action that your church is involved in. We will spend a lot of time on this in the 9 fundamentals of pastoral preaching, because it is so important for young families to see relevance and see where we're going. We don't want to just smell like ritual and routine. We want to smell like growth. We want to smell like there's something going on. And the aroma of your church is really, really important. And the better prepared you are with sermon planning, the more you'll be able to work on those illustrations, all the applications, and the integrating it into the action that your church is going to do it. We believe in engagement and engaging preaching. And so that's what we're going at with this particular point here. So that's why we're solving that problem. We want to make sure that we are getting you engaged, doing engaging stuff. And that comes with really, really good planning and knowing what you're doing. So let's just jump right back in. And then the last problem that we really want to do is kind of eliminate this overload. I talked to a pastor the other day. He did a Sunday school, a Sunday morning, a Sunday night, and a Wednesday night. So he had 4 things. And it was actually, we were chatting about it, and he's like, oh, I'm okay. I can make it. And I got a little series I'm doing here, and I'm going through this book of the Bible here, and these 2 are a little harder to figure out. But, we were talking, and I was then talking to his wife, and she said, he is burning out in study. Okay, all he does is study. He doesn't get to pastor. He doesn't get to go out and do things. He doesn't get to be all the other things because all he's doing is studying. And I don't think that that's really a healthy scenario. And so we want to try to eliminate some of those things. So, all right. The Bible talks about us as far as feeding the flock of God properly. And of course, there's many scriptures, Peter talks about feed the flock of God, which is among you, that concept. And of course, we are referred to as, shepherds or under shepherds. In Acts, Paul was talking about to the flock, which the Holy Spirit had made you an overseer, that you feed the church of God. And I want to talk to you just a little moment here about sheep. Okay. I was talking to Tandem yesterday. He's like, why are you putting sheep pictures up? It's like, because there's some very important things I want to talk to you about sheep. In my first former life, before I became a minister, I was a farmer, and I went to college, and I have a college degree in sheep. Okay, it's called ovine management technology. And, swine are pigs, and equine are horses, and bovines are cows, and ovine is a sheep. Okay, so these are some ovines that you see here in front of you. And sheep you don't just throw them the same kind of food all the time. As a wise shepherd of the flock, there are many things that have to do with sheep that you need to manage carefully, and they don't eat the same food all the time. And so the idea of just like consistency is, they want to eat consistently like every day, but the difference of the food content is different with the sheep. The large sheep that you see, the larger picture, those are a bunch of ewes, okay, the female sheep, and they are eating grain off the ground right now, and it could have been a feed trough or whatever, but likely what is going on in this photo, and the way we did it and the way it's supposed to be, is right before you're getting ready to breed the sheep, you feed them a bunch of really some high total digestible nutrient stuff, some high energy stuff like corn or cracked corn or something like that, because that helps them get ready for pregnancy. It helps them to ovulate more and have more twins and more triplets and all that. And so for like 2 weeks before that time, you feed them different than you have fed them the rest of the year. Okay, you give them a bunch of different stuff. The little picture in the right corner there is a mama ewe with a lamb. And when the mothers are milking, you obviously have to make sure that they get good food, but also you need to make sure that all that food is, especially when the lambs are very young, that food is close to home, because in other words, you don't put them in a massive pasture or out on the range when they have little baby lambs, because you don't want them running and walking and exercising away all their energy. You want them giving their energy to their young at that time. So there's a different feeding schedule during the time that they're having, right when they're having lambs and they got little baby lambs. And then the bottom picture, and I don't know if you can see it very well, but those are, sheep out on the range. And this is, once your lambs are up, 50 pounds or whatever, they're big, they can go out on the range. The ewes can eat different stuff. And before they get bred, again, it takes about 5 months for them to have a baby, and most of them just have one a year is kind of how it goes. But during that time, they have a whole different set of feeding as well. You can go with a more of a minimalistic type feed for your sheep. You don't have to, just some regular hay or pasture. And they can move a lot more. They can do stuff. Now, all of this comes from the world of sheep, and it basically means that as a wise shepherd, there are different times you want to feed different things. And that's what I want to focus on, because you as the under shepherd are the ones that know what needs to be happening with your church. And you have to analyze, you have to sit down and kind of think that through. So it is very important for you to feed the church, your people, properly. And I jumped to the next slide, but back to still on this thought is like, if you have a lot of young believers, that's totally different than if you have, a mature flock. If you have young families, okay, those are different things. If you are running, a lot of rescue type ministry, from addiction type things, different feed goes out there. So just an important thought. The next one here in the preaching calendar, why to do that? It's just more effective for the whole idea of you doing your preparation, and you are thinking about where you're going ahead of time, and what's going on, and you're not like just making it through that Sunday and then making it through the next Sunday. Based on the fact that you've looked at your flock well, that, hey, I need I need a series. I need something on evangelism. I've got to really kind of help out our people on evangelism. And you can tell by the flavor of this that we're very series based on some of this philosophy. We believe that you can expositionally preach through series. Okay, so you can exposit the word through a series instead of verse by verse. It's verse with verse. You kind of combine a bunch of verses, but you are still giving what the Bible intends, but you are really thinking it through, and you are far better prepared when you have had much more preparation time to get yourself ready. This idea of putting all the pieces together and all the little slots there. Let me show you. This is a sample. We're going to give you a copy of this, and I'm going to go through and blow it up so you can see it much closer in a little bit. But this is like one entire year of different things, and there are exposition scriptures in there. There are a series that go through books, but there's also some topical things that really help people grab hold of what they need, because you have a flock that needs to really, sharpen up on evangelism, and you're coming into a growth type season where, like, hey, we'd like to get some of these more young families in back to school thing. Then you need to teach that at that time, and it helps you kind of put all the pieces together in the right place. It helps then also with this integration, and this is where you are really working with your team, and you're working with your other people and your Sunday school people and your outreach people, whatever. And I understand in some churches you might be all of those. Okay. I do understand that, but you and I need to figure, and when we started our church, there was like nobody. I was the guy that did all that, but we took the sermons and we integrated them into service. We have a little acronym that we use here, and we don't have it on the screen. It's not necessarily part of this, but I wanted to bring this in. There's really three kind of things that we do, and in every program that we look at here in our church, we go, is it doing this? Is it doing this? Is it doing this? Okay, all three of these things. And the first one is the information. In other words, giving them Bible info. We're giving them the right stuff, from the heart to a heart. We're giving information. We are building relationships. In other words, the people in that program, that Sunday morning, the kids program, the teens, whatever, they have ample time to build relationships and have discussion and get advice, all those counsel. Those are all good. All right, this is Mike back. Hey, sorry to kind of cut you off there. What we want to do is kind of keep this short enough in bite-sized chunks so you can grab what we've talked about there. One of these most important things is the idea, for anything, is if you know why you are doing it. And the why is going to be the strongest portion of this. Now, we're going to, next week, we're going to give you the rest of this. You're going to be able to get part 2. You'll get much more of, some in-depth type on some samples, and we'll finish this little list we gave you here, especially the last one on this particular list is so helpful. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of going through and showing you the seasons that are in planning, what you need to do during this season or that season of the year. So make sure you catch the next video and follow it there on YouTube. But this is an important thing, that we learn how to plan ahead and that we are prepared ahead of time. There's going to be nothing more important, and nothing really shows more that you can't, how I worded it the other day, it's like it's very difficult to mask the aroma of an unprepared sermon, okay? You can kind of, think you got it and all that, but your people know that you're not as prepared. They know that things aren't integrated. They know that the illustrations aren't there. They know it's not all connected. And you might feel good about a sermon, and we know that God can use any sermon, and His Word is not going to return void, but we just want to make sure that we are prepared as possible, and so that's where we're going. So I'm going to sign out here. Make sure you catch the next one here. If you're watching this in series, it would be a week later, but actually it might be just tagged right here at the end. So go ahead and catch part 2 of this, and there's some samples there, and then the things that you can download, as we mentioned earlier, are just at reachkeep.com/planner. Just go to reachkeep.com/planner. You'll get the sermon series planner along with the sample annual calendar that'll be very helpful for you. So head that way, and we will see you here on part 2.